Good morning, everybody. I'm Tim Mooney of the Timothy Mooney Repertory Theater, and this is the latest in a series of explainer videos that I'm doing about the shows that I've been performing every Sunday and Monday night. This week's show is my one-man performance piece / keynote address called Lost at Santa's Village. It's about my 50 years of performing on the stage. Given that I am performing 8 one-man plays on a regular basis, each of which is about an hour long, sometimes more, the question that I get asked on a regular basis is, how do you remember all those lines? I touched on this in the piece that I did 8 weeks ago, which you can find by clicking here somewhere. But I thought that it would be good, since this is, after all, my job, to do a deeper dive into that question. So come along with me, join me for a day on my job, working on a series of pieces that we're going to call I Finally Get Memorization. It just so happens that I've got a very full plate of memorization this month. I've got 5 relatively short pieces that I'm working on in various stages of memorization, as well as 8 full 1-hour plays that I'm getting back up to speed over the course of an 8-week cycle. Today's first piece is Dwight Eisenhower, The Chance for Peace. This is part of my one-man play, The Greatest Speech of All Time. I actually performed it, but only once, way back in 2013. Never actually had to memorize it fully because I was at a podium where I had a script in hand, or at the podium at the time. Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. Okay, so I just ran the Dwight Eisenhower speech 9 times. Usually I work in groups of 3, but this time I knew that that speech needed just that little extra nudge to get over the top. Here's my philosophy. That which you measure improves. This particular speech is 538 words long. I forget how long the original was, probably 3 or 4 times that length, but I'm focusing on the most dramatic, powerful parts of the speech. I run a stopwatch on my phone while I recite. I don't look at the numbers, as that would only distract me, but the moment I finish the speech, I touch the screen, which freezes the number. I then write that number down. In other words, I track how long it takes to recite the speech, and I gather a list of numbers at the end of the speech. Here's the flip side of that page, so you can see that the entire speech runs 2 columns, a page and a half. Now, what you may notice is that I started out this speech at around 3 minutes 45 seconds back around June 29th. Over time, that number actually went up progressively to as much as 6 minutes and 10 seconds back around July 2nd. After that, you can see that the number went progressively down until today, where I actually finally cracked the 4-minute mark once again with 3 minutes and 59 seconds. As I start out, I'm just purely reading. Looking at the page the whole time, I can read this speech in 3 minutes 45 seconds. But as time goes by and more of this gets absorbed in my brain, I force myself to look away from the page more and more, only looking at the words when I absolutely have to. Which means that around July 2nd, I was beginning to attempt almost the whole script without looking at the page. The Emma Goldman speech is 718 words long, about almost 200 words longer than the Ike speech. My first and only performances of it were June 14th and 15th. Today is mostly about finding out how quickly it comes back to me, so that I'll know how much rehearsal time I'm going to need to sink into this in order to have it ready to go on August 9th and 10th, about exactly 1 month from now. Okay, I just ran that speech 3 times, and what I'm noticing is a replication of the trend that I noticed in the early days of working on the Eisenhower speech, but much more sped up. So here's the text of that Emma Goldman speech. On the flip side, you can see that the second page goes a little farther than Ike does, and here's some numbers that are from the first work on this speech. Over here is the wrap-up of that first work, and here's today. So what you notice is that the first time through was 4:28, the second time 4 minutes 57, the third time 5 minutes and 10. So it got longer as I went, but I also, over to the side here, added a second number, 45 for the first time, 27 for the second time, and 14 for the third time. That 45 represents my estimation of how many times I had to actually look down at the piece of paper to pick up my line. So the second time through, about 3 times per paragraph, 27 times, 5 paragraphs, I had to look at the line, and the third time through only 14 times. So you can see that I'm moving much more rapidly in terms of recovering the words. So the good news is that after a 24-day layoff, this one is beginning to re-assimilate far faster than it ever would if it was after an 8-year layoff. And I'm guessing that if I can do this process through once a week, going 3 times through this speech, it will be ready to go with just the daily rehearsals that I've planned beginning on August 3rd in anticipation of the August 9th performance of the whole play, The Greatest Speech of All Time. Next up, I'm going to do a road trip, or a sidewalk trip, I guess. This is about the time of the day that my eyes start to cloud over, or glaze over from all this memorization, so I like to get outside to work on a speech where I won't be looking at the script all of the time. I'm working on the next performance of Lost at Santa's Village, which is coming up in about 4 days. I've rehearsed it, I think, once over each of the last 3 days, maybe 4 days, and I've had the book in front of me while I'm doing that. I'm going to try to wing it now while walking outdoors. It's hot out there, so I may be sweaty the next time you see me. Okay, so here I am out on my walk, and I just finished the first act of what is essentially a 3-act one-man play. Each act is about 20 minutes, and that first act, according to my estimate, just took me about 25 minutes. So stumbling a little bit. What's important for me is to pay attention to whether I'm stumbling because I have no idea what the line is, or perhaps because I'm not just sure of how it's phrased or where I'm going next. So here comes Act 2. Okay, I just finished Act 2, and it also went about 25 minutes when it probably should have gone 20. It's easy to get distracted outside as you go by nice gardens and different people, and that's sometimes the what's going on, but probably more importantly is that rather than reading my words off of a prompter, I'm generating them within myself, and that's probably the most productive rehearsal I can be having, in that I am fetching those lines from the dark recesses of my mind and bringing them to my tongue, rather than just having them pass through my eyes, out the tongue, without ever passing through the brain. So that's an important part of memorization, is that time where you're struggling for that line. Because I know that tomorrow the struggle will be less, and the day after that the struggle will be less. So I'm back from my tour of the neighborhood with another 20-minute act that took about 25 minutes. It's easy to get disheartened about a run-through like that, of which I have quite a few, quite often. But it's that portion where you're struggling that actually is imprinting information, helping you to find the link between this word and that, between this line and that line, between this idea and the next idea. As I struggle through it once, my mind has made little neural links between one thought and another, and the next time is always better, and the time after that, and the time after that. So, onward. One other thing that I forgot to mention, since I have been talking about how long each of these pieces are, the one that I just did, Lost at Santa's Village, 8,300 words. And I also, for the plays that I have performances coming up of, I also grade myself on those particular recitations, so I gave myself a C. Okay, I just finished 3 run-throughs of my script of Electric Eye, which is 1,290 words long, roughly. It is 3 pages long, each page made of 2 columns, and generally when I rehearse this, I would drill a certain column again and again and again. Now, you should be able to see there's a list. I generally, when I do the whole thing, I do the whole thing 3 times, and so that list of 6 timings represents the last 6 days that I have worked on it. This one I rehearsed in various phases. Sometimes I would rehearse the first column again and again and again, and then I would jump to the last column here at the end of page 4 and do that again and again and again, and then I might go back and rehearse the second column of the first page and then the first column of the last page, essentially memorizing my way to the middle. So that was the strategy for that one, and it's starting to kick in, and I think tomorrow I will actually start in on doing this one rather than 3 times, 9 times, because I can feel this one is now hitting that plateau that the Eisenhower speech was at today. Okay, so it's been a pretty long day of memorizing, and I just finished 3 more passes through a different play, The Dog That Doesn't Bark, which is a one-man 10-minute play by myself, about 1,600 words, as you can see. This one is 4 pages long, each page in 2 columns. You can see that somewhere in here and there, I'm writing in new words. I'm adjusting the text here and there because it's still relatively new. Actually, some of it I'm updating because some of them are old references, and I want to keep it stuff that people are going to recognize. Anyway, so 4 pages, each 2 columns of words, and down here at the end of the last page we see today's numbers, which were 10:05, 10:13, and 10:05 again. So this one I wasn't even trying to recite without looking at the page. Actually, I was just reading it. And given that by this time of the day my mind is slowly turning to Swiss cheese, I'm not counting on my brain to actually remember anything, but that when I go back in the next couple of days and actually start to drill individual columns of this script, I will be able to absorb them more quickly, just because my lips and my tongue and my teeth will readily form the consonants and vowels, because they have gotten into the habit of shaping them just from the process of reading it aloud, whether or not my cognition was involved. So that was my day yesterday. Today is my day to make sense of all this and edit it all together. But to sum up some of the main points that seem to arise: put in the work whether or not you are in the mood. Work on these things daily and know where you are in the process, so that you'll know whether that speech is ready for the 9 times through treatment, or perhaps whether you just need to drill that one paragraph again and again and again. Work on a variety of projects at once so that you can continue to move the needle on each of them a little bit each day. Keep an eye on the road ahead, perhaps a month or so in advance, so that you don't find yourself in a last-minute panic trying to squeeze things into your head. And just as a side note, I tend to type my stuff into 2 columns per page. I think my eye is able to grasp a paragraph as a whole better that way than trying to track from left to right margin all the time. And finally, that which you measure improves. So that's I Finally Get Memorization. Please hit like or subscribe if you want to follow more of these videos. Also, you can catch Lost at Santa's Village this weekend, depending on when you're watching this, July 12th and 13th, 2020. Also again in September 13th and 14th. Those are Sundays and Mondays. Shows are always at 9 o'clock. If you'd like to support this work, please join us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/TimMooneyRep. And we are also available for booking when the world gets back to normal, either in person or always online. Thanks very much. See you on the stage.